when we were young, and we would have to try to work on getting it right. Well, we had been told, well, it was kind of a joke going around school, I think, that the ladies, because their voice was more musical, that they learned the language much faster than the men. Well, and then a lot of the missionary wives got pregnant that first year, and the joke was that the men did this to us, so we'd have to drop out, and they would have been ahead of us. Well, sure enough, I was pregnant by the end of that first year. This was a 2-year course. I was pregnant by the end of the first year and had to drop out. But the pregnancy paid off because I had my beautiful little Belinda, which was a beautiful Taiwan package for us. She was a great joy. And her big sister loved her dearly, so it was a wonderful time to have her. After we had finished language school, then we felt God was leading us to be out on our own, because during the language school period of time, we were helping with the Batemans in their church and doing whatever we could do with what language we had. And some of it was teaching English, and some of it was just helping with the latest group and with the few phrases and a little bit of language that we had picked up and could speak at that time. So we had decided that it was time for us to move on. So we moved to a city down in the center of the island. Judy, what time y'all gonna leave?
Right now. But, you can keep going. You can keep going.
We moved to a city down in the center of the island called Taichung. And during our life in Taiwan, from the time we moved down in 1963, the rest of our life was spent in the center part of the island, in and around Taichung area. And that's where we ministered and established several churches. But the people were very patient with us in learning the language. And even after we got out on our own, of course, you never, and we got one back here that can testify to this too. You never ever get through learning the Chinese language. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of phrases and words that unless you go into certain fields, you never learn. And so anyway, there's always learning to do in the Chinese language. So after we got to Taichung, we moved into a Japanese house. And our Japanese house had a nice yard. All the houses there had walls built all the way around them because of thieves were real bad. So it had wall built all the way around the house. And so it had a real nice yard, even had some shrubs and some flowers, and it had a little fish pond in the front, and had a grape arbor in the back. So it was a very nice place, and we had room enough that we could use our out front yard as part of our ministry. Our house was close to a medical hospital or university, and so we started teaching English to doctors and nurses. And so we would have our yard full once a week when we would have English classes for them. This was a new field for us that we had to do some studying up on too, because we did not know all the terms we needed for that, even in English, So it was kind of a learning curve, but luckily they did not know any English. So you had to start from scratch and move up with them. So it took a while for us to get to the place where we would run out of words. But I told you a while ago that in the language school, they were very, very strict on us. And we could not even speak a word of English while we were on campus. Even if we wanted to speak to our partner, we would be fined if we spoke Of course, they would use those funds then to throw a party at the end of the year. But, but anyway, you didn't speak English while you were on campus. And you may not believe it, and my kids probably don't believe it, but I became a very quiet Barbara because I didn't know enough of the language to speak then at that point. But then after we got moved out and started to work with our people, I found my tongue again. And with our young doctors and nurses, they were so lovely. And many of them followed us through our whole 40 years in Taiwan. And one of them became my dentist later. And he was my dentist for many, many years. And so we had a great time with them. We saw some of them come to know the Lord, and some of them we still pray for and still remember even now that did not make that commitment. And I just pray that everywhere they are, God will still reach them and touch their hearts. Besides the teaching in our yard with the doctors and nurses, one of the main reasons we moved to Taichung and felt that that was the place to go, there was a young Christian couple that was begging for some missionary to come down and help them. They wanted to start a church in Taichung. So we felt, after doing some investigating of where we should go, we felt that that's where we should go. So we were doing church work with them, or trying to start a church. So we rented a very small house. The living room and dining room knocked out together would be about the size of this, and couldn't hold very many people. But we had to split up our services. On Saturday night we'd have youth meeting, and sometimes our youth meeting we would have 60 or 70 youth, and especially the weeks that we would have it at our house. Once a month we would go and have it at our house, and but the other times we would probably reach 45, 50 all the time, you know. And it just really packed our facility. And then on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, we'd have children's Sunday school or children's worship, and at 10 o'clock have the adults. And then during the week, we would have the ladies group. And we're running out of time, but I wanted to introduce you to one of the ladies, and I also wanted to introduce you to one of the girls in the youth meeting. I'll start with Nancy first. She was in our youth work. She was saved and baptized under our ministry in the youth work. Nancy was very unusual Chinese. She's very tall, probably about as tall as Crystal. And the Chinese at that time, when we walked the street, everybody knew we were foreigners because we were that much higher than anybody else. They could just look out there and know how many foreigners were there, you know, because the Chinese were very short. But she was very tall. So in her school and anywhere that she went, people pointing, you know, at her. And so she developed some problems because of that. But anyway, she came to church for English. And on Saturday night, we would have an English class first and then go into a Bible study. And she was saved and baptized. And she would come to our house regularly and play with the girls. And some nights she wouldn't go home until 12, 1 o'clock. She still had to go home. So I told my husband one night, I said, we need to find out why Nancy's not going home. And so we approached her about it and asked her about it. Her parents were fighting, and her dad would take a butcher knife to her mother and never harmed her because she'd always get out of the way. But anyway, there was a fight going on. So she would wait till she knew all the family was in bed before she would go home. So finally we asked her, because she was there every night and we just couldn't stay up that long every night, you know, night after night. We asked her, Nancy, would you like to move in here? And she said, yes. So she went home and talked to her mother. Her mother said, okay. So she moved in with us. And Nancy was, as I told you, was very tall. She became a prominent worker with our youth in helping us all the rest of the time. We saw her through high school. She finished high school. We sent her to college. And our first time in Taiwan, we stayed 5 years, which they usually make you go home after 4, come home for a year. But we stayed 5 because we wanted to see her into college before we left to know that she was okay. And so Nancy was a great blessing to us during all of that work. And Nancy now lives in California, she and her husband. And her husband, we prayed for years, and we begged her not to marry a non-Christian, but you know how those things are. And so we prayed for her for years, and he does know the Lord. He's his Savior now. And so that we're grateful for that. And the lady in the latest group that I wanted to introduce you to, we could not just get the ladies to come to the church for Bible study. What's a Bible study? What's that to do with me? You know, because they were all Buddhist worshipers. And the head of the house, the husband, would not let them just come for Bible study if they knew there was Bible study going on. So I had to think of something else. They all loved my desserts that I would make and serve, so they wanted to learn how to make desserts. So I said, okay, but no one had an oven. So what shall they do? No one had an oven. So my husband used his brain, as he usually does, and he created an oven for everybody. And he went to the stainless steel shop and drew it off, and they built a little square oven with one shelf in it and with 4 legs in the corner, and you set it on a hibachi. And you can bake in that. The only trick was you had to learn when to put another piece of wood or coal in the hibachi and when to pull one out. If it gets too hot, you pull one out. If it's not hot enough, you put another piece in. So I practiced it daily for 2 weeks before I would have the first class because it was, you know, you really had to learn how to jiggle that in order to get the right temperature to cook everything. But anyway, in that class, my very first convert was a lady who was, her husband was a doctor, and he had been in one of our English classes earlier in our home or in our yard. And so she was coming to this ladies group because she wanted to learn desserts. We would mix up our dessert, put it in the oven, and while it was cooking, then we'd have Bible study. They would not leave because when it comes out, they get a share, they get a bite of the dessert, and they want to see what it tastes like. Then we would present them with a recipe in Chinese that they could take home. And then when they discovered we had those little ovens, they said, will you make us one? So we had a whole bunch made, we took the number, and then they just paid for what it cost to have them made. So everybody has their oven now. So every week we can meet together, and if the husband comes in, say, we're baking goods, you know, we're making desserts. And if the husband stays long enough, you get a bite too. Anyway, so this is how we did many things. We had knitting classes, we had sewing classes, we had a lot of different things to make the ladies come and have contact with us, or for us to have contact with them. There are so many ways that we can use our talents, ladies. We don't have to be a great speaker. We don't have to be greatly educated. We don't have to be, wish we were like so-and-so, look at her, what she can do. No. Use what you got. All of us have something that we can use for the Lord. And if you use it for the Lord, it's going to grow. It'll just get better and better all the time. And you'll be happier and happier all the time. As we close, I'm sorry some had to leave. They had a music recital or something going on. As we close, I want to ask each one of you, and ask myself as well, in what ways can you or can I fulfill this great commission that we just read about? And fulfill it in context with our family, with our work, or with our community. How can we fulfill that great commission? It tells us to go out. It doesn't name any particular place. So your destination for this great commission would be different from mine. Yours may be your family member. Yours may be your neighbor. Yours may be a friend in another state that right now, because of computers and all of that, we can even communicate the gospel to them. I am sending gospel messages to a lady in Taiwan right now that I've prayed for 20 years, and she still does not know the Lord. The other day I sent her plan of salvation all over again, and I will continue. And the Lord has blessed that we can have those instruments now. We don't have to go out on the street necessarily. And I apologize to all you ladies, because when we were younger, we would be visited in your home often. And you probably say, good. You can't do it anymore. But anyway, we would be visiting in your home and having prayer with you for different matters. But age now does not allow that like it did when we were younger. And I apologize for that, because the pastor needs to keep up with all of his flock. But I do try to keep up with most of you through the texting and through the electronic facilities. So they laughed at me. So we love you, and even on weeks that I don't text you and ask how you're doing, just know that we love you and we're praying for you daily. And we just hope that through this message, some way you can find where you can use the Great Commission, because it's for you too. It's not just for the missionaries or for the pastors. It's for everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry we ran over that. And maybe the next time or the next time, we don't know the program yet, but I will take up there and bring you up to date on the rest. And I hope you've been blessed with some little something.
Miss Barbara, can we pray over you?